we come here, first we welcome you, Honorable Minister, and the whole team from Uganda Police. First, we acknowledge and thank you for turning up. Every time we invite you here, you really respect our invitations. I can see that from the IGP, deputy, and all directors are here. We don't take this for granted. And that's why we also committed as the committee to make sure we strengthen every other aspect concerning the work that you do. In that line, Honorable Minister, while we are here, we have exchanged communications. The subject is CCTV. Is it called closed circuit television cameras? This is a project that was started in 2018. Substantial amount of money was invested in, I think to the tune of 120 million United States dollars. Supposed to cover 11 cities and 20 municipalities and 43 towns of the Republic of Uganda, with the major objective to improve public safety and law enforcement. We acknowledge that CCTV is a critical component in fighting crime and criminology in the Republic of Uganda, and making sure the work of police is easy to handle, i.e. protecting Ugandans and their property. So we come here to do what we can call boardroom monitoring and evaluation. We know the project has been implemented in phases, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. We are interested, as we wrote to you, to see so far progress in implementation, effectiveness, efficiency, performance, coverage, and challenges therein. Because I think 3 weeks to come, you'll be appearing before this committee again with regard to ministerial policy statement. It's important that we understand each other even before you come up to present further requirements with regards to either performance, repair, and everything. So without further ado, Honorable Minister, this committee communicated to you all the concerns, so we'll give you a chance to make a presentation, and then honorable colleagues will have an opportunity to respond if there is. But we're also aware that another committee, a committee of accountability in this parliament, interacted with you with regards to this particular project. I think this is PAC, Public Accounts Committee. We're also aware that the Auditor General has had opportunity to look at this project, raised questions and concerns. So your presentation will be covering all that. Before I give you a chance, let me give an opportunity to Honorable Naboth, who joined us, to introduce himself. Then after that, I'll give you a chance, Honorable Minister.
Good morning, our guests. My name is Namanya Naboth.
Come and engage on this very important subject of the CCTV system, which we think is a force multiplier in law enforcement. That's why it's intimate to government and thus the docket handlers who are charged with the day-to-day enforcement of the law. Indeed, you invited us to appear before this committee We didn't make it last week, but you gave us a second chance. And I'm here with the police team and the leadership to give our side of our perspective about this matter. With your permission, Chair, I'll read through our presentation, which speaks to the issues you raised, and then we'll have time to discuss with the team I have and the members of the committee. I hope everyone has a copy of the paper, and I'll beg to run through the paper. I'll start with the background. The National CCTV System Project was conceived in 2017 as a measure of enhancing the detection and prevention of crime. The implementation started in 2018, specifically 28th May of that year, with phase 1 that covered Kampala Metropolitan Policing Area and phase 2 that covered all municipalities, highways, and major towns. The 2 phases were fully implemented. Phase 3 is yet to commence. Introduction. The Uganda Police Force is yet to begin. There's a typo there. We haven't yet begun to implement CCTV phase 3 after completing phase 1 and 2. This phase addresses remaining gaps in the Kampala metropolitan area and other regions, and would focus on improving system operations, maintenance, and upgrading existing CCTV infrastructure. During oversight visits, the committee noted concerns about malfunctioning cameras that hinder crime prevention. This inquiry evaluates the performance of phase 1 and 2 and examines the implementation progress and challenges of phase 3. Response. The cameras are operating normally with performance average ranging between 85% to 95%. Some districts achieve 100%. The implementation of phase 3 has not commenced because funds have not been secured. Issues for phase 1 and 2. Financial performance, approved budget and supplementary appropriation. The committee requires a detailed breakdown of the approved budget for phase 1 and 2, including any supplementary appropriations provided to meet unforeseen costs. Our response, Chair and honorable members, is that the budget appropriation was as follows. A, phase 1 was budgeted at USD 82,756,809.1, and phase 2 was budgeted at USD 37,520,876.83. There was no supplementary budget provided during implementation. 2, related budget and warrants. The committee seeks to assess whether the allocated budget was released in full and whether the release of funds was timely. This includes an analysis of budget warrants issued for implementation of phase 1 and 2. Our response is that the project was facilitated using a loan. Funds were always available for timely execution of the project. That is why the project was implemented in the exact planned timelines. Secondly, budget expenditure. Regarding budget expenditure, a report on the actual expenditure incurred for the implementation of these phases is required. This includes details on whether funds were spent efficiently with clear justification for any variations. The response is that all the funds were clearly spent efficiently and there was no variations from original budget. This was because the designs were well done and risks assessed properly. The minor risks that occurred had no implication on the budget. Areas and districts implemented. The committee requests a comprehensive list of the areas and districts where CCTV systems were deployed under phase 1 and 2, and this should highlight whether the key areas prone to crime were covered, as well as any areas left unaddressed. Our response, Honorable Chair and members, is that the CCTV system cameras covered all the KMP 19 policing divisions for phase 1 and all municipalities, including Masaka, Mbarara, Mtungamo, Kabale, Chisoro, Rukunjiri, Mshenyi, Kasese, Fort Poto, Mubende, Mitiana, Hoima, Masindi, Arua, Gulu, Kitgum, Lira, Soroti, Moroto, Mbale, Kapchora, Tororo, Iganga, Kamuli, Jinja, as well as major towns and highways. The sites were majorly placed in areas prone to crime, like markets and junctions, as points unavoidable to pass. Details are on page 10 of this report. Chair and honorable members, contributions to crime reduction and public safety. An assessment is needed to evaluate how effective the CCTV system was in meeting the intended goals, such as reducing crime, enhancing public safety, and preventing incidents. Data on crime rate before and after implementation in the monitored areas should be considered to determine its impact. Our response: since implementation of the CCTV system in 2018, 42,427 operation and intelligence-led incidents have been managed. 6,688 cases underwent thorough investigations with the aid of footages got from the CCTV as follows. 1,000 are under trial, 168 were acquittals, 729 were convicted successfully, and then 4,385 were handed over to the investigation officers. The details of the incidents are on pages 19 to 24 of the main report. Honorable Chair and members, compliance with legal, ethical, and privacy standards. A report on the level of compliance with legal, ethical, and privacy standards is required. This includes an evaluation of how the surveillance system adheres to national data protection laws, as well as international privacy standards, particularly regarding the handling of footages. Our response is as follows. Compliance is guided by the following acts of Parliament and attendant regulations. 1, the Data Protection and Privacy Act 2019 and regulations thereunder. 2, the Computer Misuse Act 2022. 3, the Electronic Transactions Act 2011. 4, the Uganda Communications Act 2013. 5, the Penal Code Act, Cap 120, Laws of Uganda. 6, the Standard Operating Procedures for the National Command Center of the Uganda Police Force. However, it should be noted that there is no law guiding the operation of CCTV systems. Hence, a cabinet memo has been drafted for guidance, and hopefully it will result in enactment as a law guiding this subject. Reasons for the cabinet memo are well explained on page 27 of the main report. Incident tracking and reporting framework. The framework should be established for tracking and reporting incidents where CCTV systems play a significant role. The committee requires details on how incidents are documented and analyzed to identify areas where the system could have performed better. Response: there is CCTV case and incident management system used as the primary tool for reporting and tracking cases, incorporating the following key parameters. 1, incident identification and logging. 2, evidence collection and verification. 3, video analysis and incident construction. 4, report generation and documentation. 5, incident escalation and legal considerations. The details of each parameter are in the main report at page 28. Incident response efficiency. The committee requires a report on the efficiency of incident responses based on footage provided by the CCTV system. This includes evaluating response times or coordination with law enforcement and overall effectiveness in addressing incidents captured on the CCTV system. Response. The response to incidents is categorized as mean time to detect, mean time to acknowledge, mean time to contain, and mean time to recover. The response to receiving the emergency is at 30 seconds, and mean time to respond is at 15 minutes. Details are on pages 29 to 33 of the main report. Generally, the response to real-time monitoring is averaged at 20 minutes because of good coordination with territorial police and field intelligence teams. 4. Issues on response on implementation of the CCTV Phase 3 project. Right, Chair and honorable members, it should be noted that the Phase 3 has not been implemented because designs are in final stages, and hence the budget is not yet approved. Financial performance. The committee seeks a detailed financial report covering the following: the approved budget for Phase 2, 3, and any supplementary appropriations, 2 released budget and budget variation warrants for the implementation of Phase 3, 3 budget expenditures and analysis of whether they are aligned with the intended scope and timelines. Our response is as follows. There is no approved budget for Phase 3. The approval is expected in the calendar year 2025. Needs assessment. An evaluation of the security requirements for areas targeted by Phase 3 is necessary. This includes an analysis of crime rates in the specific areas identified for CCTV installation, 2, threats, vulnerabilities, and the urgency of security interventions in these areas. Response. Phase 3 of the CCTV project aims at addressing gaps identified in Phase 1 and 2 through the following ways. 1, expanding CCTV coverage to increase camera density and reduce blind spots. 2, onboarding of social cameras. 3, introduction of body-worn cameras. 4, expansion of the mobile event monitoring cameras and command vehicles. 5, enhancing data center capacity to support growing storage and processing needs. 6, extending the network and fiber infrastructure to cover new cities. 7, upgrading existing core regional call centers and establishing new regional call centers. Then modernizing and monitoring centers at police stations with alternative storage solutions and implementing hybrid power grid systems to mitigate power outage challenges. Then implementation of the Security Operating Center, implementing of unmanned aerial surveillance vehicles, expansion of digital mobile radio DMR communication system, and training and capacity building. The details are on pages 44 to 49 of the main report. Chair and members, system design. The committee needs an assessment of the quality and efficiency of the CCTV system design, and this should include camera specs, e.g. resolution, type, and their suitability for the intended environments. 2, placement of cameras to ensure comprehensive coverage of high-risk areas. 3, integration with other security systems, e.g. information transport system, ITMS. Our response, Chair and members, is that the camera specifications are well defined, architecture aligned, and storage cell calculated. The placement of sites is coordinated, oriented, and identified by area operations, police, and intelligence officers. The integration is already catered for in the current system, therefore it will be continuation. Details of the designs are on pages 48 to 54 of the main report. Risk management. A detailed evaluation of the potential risks during installation and operational phases must be provided, and this includes system performance issues and strategies to address them, identification of cybersecurity vulnerabilities, compatibility with existing infrastructure, including power supply, network connectivity, and other technical considerations. Our response is that the risks range from connectivity to system management, which include internal and external attacks. These risks and mitigations have been detailed on pages 55 to 61 of the main report. Installations. Chair and members, the committee seeks to understand whether the installation timelines were adhered to, particularly the delivery and installations of equipment, the completion of installations within the projected timeframes, and any delays encountered during the process and the causes. Our response is that the raised issues are not applicable because the project hasn't commenced. However, from the previous experience, all will be adhered to once the project is approved and budget allocated. Policy on operational costs and crime reduction outcomes. A policy should be in place to evaluate the long-term operational costs of CCTV system. And these include a cost-benefit analysis of the project's effectiveness in reducing crime, sustainable funding models for operation and maintenance expenses, and consideration of whether the system's effectiveness justifies operational costs. Chair and honorable members, our response is that the Uganda Police Force has an ICT policy that gives guidelines on systems evaluation in terms of cost-saving measures, maintenance, strategy, and ICT operational costs. These are reviewed from time to time because hence the same applies to the CCTV system. Long-term sustainability. The committee seeks a report on the long-term sustainability of the CCTV project, specifically addressing 1, the system's capacity for future upgrades and scalability, 2, funding mechanisms for ongoing maintenance and operations, and 3, the feasibility of keeping the system operational in the long term. Our response, Honorable Chair and members, is that during the design, scalability is catered for in terms of network and storage. The funding of maintenance has kept improving through supplementary budget allocations, and the system has to keep running because the Uganda Police Force recruited qualified IT and engineers to do maintenance of the system. Only continuous training of technical teams on new upgrades and users on usage of the system is required. That is our submission, Chair and honorable members, and we are ready for engagement on the report as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for this detailed main report needs to be submitted to us if it is intended for us, because on every page you mention the main report. So the main report needs to be given to us. Just one question, then I give a chance to, it's about the whether some of these are actually security matters, but you need to assure the country that your cameras have capacity to detect face of a criminal, whether hooded or not hooded. 2, facial recognition, because you mentioned facial reconstruction. Whether the cameras have capacity to detect a covered face, can clearly identify if somebody turns up. These criminals are equally clever. 2, we have had incidences of the main grid going off, power outages. Does that affect your cameras, or the cameras have inbuilt capacity for power to keep running power outages or no outages? And is this the case throughout the country? Thank you. Honorable colleagues, please. Honorable K.
Honorable Chair, I will begin from a point actually you raised. Do these cameras speak to each other? Do they speak to other systems? For example, the one that will be reading the number plates, or it is segmented? Was this system made in a form that it can work with the other systems? For example, that will be tracking vehicles, that will be tracking vehicle, motorcycle number plates. Then, Chair, also on Auditor General's report, clearly indicates that the lifespan, the storage of this, the capacity of these cameras is 90 days. What happens after the 90 days of this stored information? And have you taken any efforts to maybe raise the capacity, the lifespan of the information captured on the cameras? we are moving to artificial intelligence. How compliant is this, either phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3? How will it be compliant to AI? Then vandalism. How have you handled the vandalism? Is there any step you have taken to curb vandalism, and then also interference on highways, construction? Does it affect you when they are erecting maybe electricity or billboards, or when they are passing water? Is there any impact? Then how much will phase 3 cost? You have told us phase 1 will have 82 billion US dollars, the phase 2 will have 37. So how much is phase 3? And then how much was the total cost? Then also, Chair, I think for now I can end there.
Thank you. Thank you.
With the figures actually on page 3, phase 1 being 82, 37, phase 2. This Parliament, Chair, I think we approved a loan of about 104 million dollars from Standard Chartered. When I try to make computations here, you realize that phase 1 and phase 2 will give you a figure of $120 million. So I was wondering where we got the extra money, because we approved a loan of $104 million. But that aside, Chair, the idea of coming up with these cameras was to have a city free of criminality. And aware of what is happening in this country, and Ugandans are asking that, as we promised them that when we put these cameras in place, we shall indeed come to the bottom of all this criminality happening in the country. But time and again, we continue seeing this, and actually our people out there still continue asking for these reports. We don't come out to clearly say these cameras have helped us. In the case of this, these are the culprits. In the case of this, these are the culprits. So, Chair, when you go, we look at this camera, I want to ask whether these cameras are networked and that data is sent directly to the headquarters, and that the officers who are linked, that these cameras are linked to officers, to police station for better results. It is important. Even the Deputy Director and the Director of Criminal Intelligence, if we had actually a robust CCTV system, we wouldn't be having all these cases. And Chair, I think it is also prudent as a committee to tell our police that before us thinking about going to other places, we should have really secured this city called Kampala. Chair, in this city and metropolitan as a whole, we have areas without the CCTV cameras. And we moved as a committee, indeed, much as you report the efficiency of the cameras, but most of the cameras were not working. So we want to know that as we moved in the field to really assess the functionality of these cameras, to date, whether these cameras have been repaired and therefore all of them are working. Chair, I have also looked on page 4 of areas and districts implemented. The minister, in his presentation, points out some districts with 100%, but it does not come out to show us which district is this, which is at 100%.
I am a person who resides near the border, and we know that cross-border criminal activity is at times high, and some of these criminals get to cities like Kampala. But when you look at the areas covered here, you realize that maybe a district like Soro is the one which is appointed. When you look at border districts, most of them are not indicated. So I do not know which plan you have for the border districts. When you go to areas like Malaba, you go to areas like Busia, is not mentioned. You go to areas like Namisindwa, you go to areas like Wukwo, you go to areas like Isingiro, you go to areas. I have not seen this. And yet we know very well that cross-border criminal activity also impacts heavily on the security of our country. So, Chair, I think we shall have more to ask.
Thank
but
you.
I was interested in this particular.
Okay. Honorable Naboth, can we come back here?
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank the Minister for. You indicate that the performance of cameras is between 85 to 95. Or to some extent, in some districts, 100. This makes me raise a question to what extent this could be true. In 2023, Rukunjiri in particular, Rubabo County, Nyarushanje Sub-County, Bwanga Parish, one person called Tudiamuleva Deus was kidnapped at that time. And according to what I got from the DPC, from Rukunjiri district, he was briefly seen by the camera in Impiji just here. Now, this makes me raise a question, whether it is possible that somebody is kidnapped from Rukunjiri, is driven all the way from Rukunjiri to Mpiji, and the cameras from Rukunjiri up to Mpiji are unable to see the vehicle because he was kidnapped with his vehicle. To date, that person, to Diamuleva Deus, to be particular, for it to make record clear, to Diamuleva Deus, has never been seen, and his vehicle has never been seen. Now, it makes me, those areas are not in the courtyard of the superintendent of traffic, Afande Nwabine, he knows those areas. It makes me raise a question whether the performance actually is 85 to 95, as you state, if a person can be kidnapped by unknown people from Rukunjira and he is briefly seen by a camera in Impiji. What happened to the cameras between Impiji and Rukunjira distance almost over 300 kilometers? And we have constantly demanded for the whereabouts of that person and his vehicle as mandated by government, of course, through you security agencies, and up to now there is no report that has been released. So it raises a question. We need to get clarity whether really this is the percentage of the performance. Finally, I think it would be prudent that we get to brief the country that before the introduction of cameras, the crime rate was at this rate. And after the introduction of camera, the crime rate has reduced to this rate, maybe in terms of percentage, so that we paint a picture for Ugandans to see whether it's true there is a benefit, whether there is value for money, whether we needed the cameras or not. But bringing it like that to do not bring out the picture properly. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and our guests.
Thank you, Honorable.
Joto Ibrahim, representing people of DOP West, behind the district, and I'm a member of this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Page 5. Page 5 says, however, it should be noted that there is no law guiding operation of CCTV systems. Honorable Chair, I would like to know if these cameras were installed in 2018, and to date is 2025. They are 5 years down on the road. Why has the management taken long to make sure that these laws are put into existence so that they can manage them? And under which law did you acquire? How did you acquire them? What was the intention? How were you going to? And
Yeah, maybe to, I know.
No, let him conclude.
But you are confusing. Honorable Chair, for me, I would like to know the period has been long when you are not putting these laws into existence.
Yes.
Make sure that you govern and you manage these CCTV cameras in accordance with the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Sebi. You made your point. Honorable Brandon.
I have concerns. One, when you look at figures, I truly appreciate and know that Uganda as a government operates in shillings. So I would like to know what is so urgent and very important that these figures are actually in dollars, because my government operates in shillings, but we have figures in dollars. Can we really know and get the comparison out of that? Then secondly, the percentage of the performance is very good, and we can appreciate it's good because it's also exposing the men in uniform that you command. So we call upon IGP and the minister here. Some of us in the line of our duty that we do speak and defend, sometimes they're undefendable. As we have these cameras, let us also have, I'm glad that last time we talked about recruiting human rights officers that will be trained to respect and observe human rights of Ugandans. It's very, very, very difficult to speak about something. You'll say camera, and you'll see, I'm glad that the chair talks about visibility. They'll show you images, you'll only say uniform, and somebody is boxing someone. So, and then you are like, is this the efficiency of the cameras that we have? Can you also, as we put these systems, because these are the same things that are going to empty and expose us internationally. You cannot talk about human rights when you see Agre here, if he's an uniform and slapping a journalist. But these are our own cameras that are seeing. And then also, some places have cameras. They are there. I don't know whether these are just cameras like flowers. And the spokesperson of police or whoever is supposed to respond says, we do not have, because our cameras are not showing us. But here there is a lot of money in these faces and performances. And then you see, actually I want to mock somehow to see whether I can trigger these cameras to see what happens if they really capture and work. So we need to answer these things. We talk about human rights, we have cameras, but these cameras, they are also going to expose us. Then lastly, we have cameras that are installed in private places, private people, say bars or hotels or some fancy homes. How do you relate, especially if there are issues of crime, there's robbery, and then you have to check out the footage. How do you relate with your center of camera? I think should be Nateto Forensics in Nagu. Would like to know that. But Bwana IGP, these cameras are good, we appreciate. We have just seen ugly actions. We have to talk about them, that as we have these cameras, to expose, let us have an exposure that will help Ugandans, but not to embarrass us as a country and the institutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
To augment on what Honorable Brandon is stating, that these CCTV cameras owned by us in our homes, do you have any correlation with them, as he states? Do they speak to each other? And it comes from even my question. Do they speak to your system? And what legal regime is there in place that you can use them as evidence? My camera to be used as evidence. We want that correlation. Can it be substantively tendered in court that we use the private camera to capture this information?
Okay. Honorable Godfrey, then we conclude.
Chair, thank you. As we actually recognize that cameras are performing at 85 to 95%, to speak to the integrity of the officers who are manning these cameras. You are aware that in this country, one of the major challenges that we are facing is corruption. And we cannot get to the bottom of the investigation that we carry or the results that the cameras produce if we cannot be sure of how this data or footages are kept. We have some members of the community who claim that even some of these footages, they are not sure whether they are well kept because of corruption, that the officers who are in the CCTV or control room can actually choose, if approached by a criminal, to go and erase the footage. So I want to ask the minister, which plan do you have in place to protect this data which is actually captured by our cameras?
Thank you. Honorable Minister, there is absolutely no doubt that CCTV is a force multiplier in law enforcement. I have additional two concerns. One, with the guidance of His Excellency the President and Commander-in-Chief, police and policing model has shifted to sub-county model, sub-county police model, which this committee approved and is incorporated in the budget, which you have actually adopted and started implementing. My concern is whether this force multiplier is now modeled towards the sub-county policing model, so that you do not have one effective policy being implemented and then another one hanging and they are not talking to each other. Two, I have information that members of public who have required this camera footage in some instances have been required to pay for this camera footage. Why? Ugandans required to pay for this camera footage. Is it a standard policy? If yes, are the prices displayed? When you compare this with another force multiplier, for example, K9, those two do an important job in law enforcement, prevention, fighting criminality, and investigation. Again, I would imagine that K9 is also now modeled towards sub-county policing model. So hence the CCTV. Phase 1 and 2 came because we needed to cover as many cities and towns and highways. But now that we are focusing to a sub-county model, I think the new design of phase 3, in my view, needs to be designed towards that. And because a standalone camera is also not a good thing. You need response. It needs to be data and footage needs to be used by people who are nearby. That is it. I'll give you a chance, Honorable Minister. Oh, okay.
Mine is just a concern on the elevation of direction of the cameras. The lights, floodlights, when you are driving, it tends to interfere with as you approach. I can specifically talk about the one in Tinda. The police know that Kaltusi, around where the Kaltusi, those who have been in Tinda barracks, have lived in Tinda barracks know, as you descend down from those mountains down to Shell, as you approach, the light tends to interfere with the driver, so I don't know how they will put. Then, Chair, I don't know what happened to this contractor on the expressway. You know,
under the contract, they're supposed to have those light throughout the street lights. But for the last 2 or 3 weeks, they are not working. So that tends to interfere with the possibility, in case there is an incident, the cameras to capture. In case there is an incident, I think, I don't know whether I work with the Ministry of Works, that company called Aegis that manages that place. Because they collect money every day, why would they fail to repair them, to repair them in case of problem, or if it is linked to the umeme, why can't they be able to pay? So thank you, Chair, for now.
Okay.
I may tend to affect for the question which may have been asked. I'm sorry. Honorable Chair, I happen to be one of the victims in the hands of police in Kawempe, wherein IGP or DPC called Matovo of Kawempe ordered the judge to assault, batter, kicked and slapped me. I have had several of my colleagues and several Ugandans having gone through the same. And for the sake of the DPC of Wandegea, I have heard that some actions are being taken. I want to know whether it is a collective action being taken against all police officers who were involved in battering and killing and assaulting Ugandans in Kawempe, or it is a selective action, or it only requires us to take action like the one we took in 2017 against Nanoka and the then IGP. You remember very well, because I spearheaded that we need to do that, or an action is being taken against those police officers, or it is a selective action being taken. That is issue number one. Issue number two, Mr. IGP, still around that, are you the one who sanctioned JAD to do all those actions which he did, or you are not in control of them? And if you are not in control, who is in control of the JAD in Kawempe? Thank you.
A team to reinforce me. Starting with yours, Chair, you talked about the sub-county policing model and how it sits within the, or resides with the CCTV system and coverage. Indeed, we are doing the sub-county policing model now, but sometimes some sub-counties are in areas already covered. That's the fortunate thing. Those which are not will have to wait for the percolation down of the coverage. I think that's what, because some of the sub-counties, even as we reorganize, we found that we don't even need to send people there. They're already covered, whether in cities or municipalities or towns. So it's a balance sheet. I think we need to tabulate the coverage and see which sub-county in the planned model is covered and which is not within the CCTV grid. But ideally, we should cover all the spots that need to be covered for this system to give us the effect we deserve from it, in ensuring that we enforce the law more efficiently. Then you asked about assuring the country that the cameras have capacity to detect a covered face. I don't want to hazard an answer here. The technical people will help us on what it can do. But what I know is that it can identify someone, but it may not identify a hooded person. And this system is also complementary to other force multipliers. Because if you are covered, your face is covered, you still will use the road desirably which is covered. Maybe you are in a vehicle which is numbered. So there are other complementary factors which may help finally to track you down, just in case your face is not identifiable. But the technical people will help on the detail of how effective the cameras are and how far they go in identifying people who engage in mischief. The main grid going off, power and IT outages, I want the technical people to help us there. Whether the system depends on, has an inbuilt power system, or it depends on the national power grid. I think Mariamu Isachi will come in there to answer that one when the time comes. On pay, I don't know this, pay for the services of footage. I think even before pay, why should someone access this information? It's like we are trading information. I think that one is, we should start there, because this is the information which ideally even should be governed by the laws of the country. You don't just give it out even before we come to pay. Why should someone private? And it should ideally be used in law enforcement and investigations and prosecution. So even before we go to pay, I think the elephant in the room is how should this information go into private hands?
Information?
Because, Chair, in October last year, my farm, I have a farm in Mbale City, was attacked by some thieves. They broke in, took some animals, and that time I was not around. I was in Kenya. So I told my officers, my boys, to go and report the case. When they reached the police, in fact, the officers asked that we can help as we were preparing to go to court, because some suspects were arrested. Then the officers asked the boys to ask me to give them some money to go and retrieve the footages, but also do analysis. So, but for me, I told them I do not have that money because this is crime. You cannot tell me to give them money when they really, their work is supposed to help the country be in order and fight crime. So I refuse. Up to now, the case is still in court.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Court.
So I think the IGP will respond to that one, but I think the idea of the information we get from this is that it should help us to investigate crime and get the culprits, not to trade it even with the victims of crime and to make them pay. And where
in this case, you don't know the person asking for the footage. It could even be a victim.
It could be
a victim or a culprit.
But also, it's your work.
Yeah.
You have got the information, use it to get the culprit. So, but we shall get to the bottom of it. We've taken note of that one, and we shall pursue it so that whoever engages in trading footages is brought to book. Honorable Keo, do these cameras speak to each other? Yes, they do, and they are linked by the command center. I hope you had time to visit the command center, and the IGP and team will speak more to this integration, because at the end of the day, once you collect this information, it must be used, and the integration point is the command center at Naguru. The Auditor General's report indicates that the storage lifespan is 90 days. It needs an upgrade. The technical people should help us here, but also the backup. Once the information reaches expiry time in terms of storage, do we have a backup? I think technical people note that one, and you will reinforce me. Any relationship with private cameras? Somebody else raised it. For now, no. And we only use volunteer information from those with private cameras. We also don't have a legal regime that governs the private cameras and how they can input into the national grid of cameras, and what we need to understand what the private people can seed for purposes of law enforcement and what they can keep to themselves. So that one, there's no integration at this point. AI compliance. Is the system compliant with AI? I want to say that the system itself is AI. We are already in AI, so it's artificial intelligence. The degree to what we want to go is, I think, the only difference. In some places, like in Dubai, they do smart policing. Smart policing. Fewer people, it's eyes everywhere. But that also means money. It also means a lot of other things, including the law. How far can you pry into people's lives? You need to make a trade-off as a country to have that conversation, but it comes to money. So the system itself is AI, and indeed it speaks to AI, but the difference is the degree and extent we want to go in that direction to ensure that we enforce the law and do so better. Vandalism, we've had some cases, but we have inbuilt measures, sometimes with spikes on the poles of the cameras, not sufficient. Sometimes even our cameras are prone to damage by errant people who are driving recklessly. They knock them. Infrastructure development interference, yes, indeed. And the technical people will comment on this hazard on the camera system. The cost of phase 3, still IGP and team will provide it, and our financial person, the Undersecretary. Honorable Akoli, figures on the financials versus what was approved. He's saying we used more than what was approved. Where did you get the extra money? Undersecretary will answer that one. Then he also asks about the idea at inception was to have a crime-free country, but what is happening now regarding the ease of detection, of prevention of crime. I want to answer that the idea was to enhance criminal investigations, to make it easier for law enforcement to track down those who commit crime. And I think to an extent, this system has done its work. It has gaps, and that's why we are here to plug some of those gaps and even make it better. Whether cameras are networked, yes, they are, through the command center. Whether we should concentrate on Kampala as to have the main effort, yes, Kampala is the capital city, and most of the gaps we have are in the city. That's why in phase 3, desirably we would want to cover the gaps of phase 1 and 2, in addition to adding on the coverage. The honorable member also wants a comment on maintenance, how the current network is maintained. I think technical people will provide more information. He talks about page 4, the coverage, districts and municipalities, that we are talking about in some instances 100%. He wants you to amplify this and give more explanation. He's not satisfied. So technical people note that one. And then he's talking about border districts. Mariam Isachi, you answer the Honorable Wakoli on that one, because he's saying it seems we are not covered in the border districts where he comes from. Then he mentions the integrity of officers. This is key, very key, of the users of this information, a lot of information in the hands of these people. How are they vetted? What are the SOPs that governs their conduct? What are the sanctions that are there when they go astray, like the issue of pay, which we talked about? I think IGP will have to make a comment on that one, especially on the discipline of these people who handle this key information. Honorable Naboth talked about also performance. He's not satisfied. The technical person needs to elaborate more to satisfy his query. And then he talks about that kidnap in Rukunjiri in Wango Parish in 2023. Maybe CID and Asaba could make a comment on that case. But also, it seems to me that those who kidnapped this person avoided the road and only appeared at Impiji. So that's the reason why they couldn't be seen until they reached Impiji. That's my layman's explanation, but the technical people will reinforce me. But also, the cameras are not an end in themselves. They are part of a system of infrastructure for law enforcement. So you have to have other complementary measures to make the best out of these cameras. And then update on the justification for even phase 3. That's what Honorable Naboth wants. Why, before you go to phase 3, you need to satisfy us that phase 1 and 2 have been worthwhile. And I think that's why we are here. But also, I'll need reinforcement from my colleagues to satisfy the Honorable Naboth. Why phase 3 before we are not convinced about phase 1 and 2? We need to satisfy the members, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who will, and this is part of the journey to that end state. Honorable Sevikali, no law yet. How did you start this system with no law governing the system? Under which law were they acquired? We've given a regime of laws which we have to be sensitive to as we use especially the information we get from these cameras. You can install them, you don't need any enabling law, but how do you use them? The information you get from them without interfering with the privacy of people, without, how do you? That's why even before you talk of connecting private cameras to these ones, you need the people to agree. How much can I give away of my privacy to go on the national grid? And I think that's the conversation we talk about. How much information, which is not in the public space, how do you use it? Even for prosecution, to make it admissible in the courts of law. I think that's where we are. And we delayed indeed because of the evolving nature of our law enforcement system, but we need a legal regime to cover this very, very important subject about how we use this information to improve security of the public. Honorable Brandon, concerns in the figures, financials, and the Secretary, you have to answer that one. Why in dollars? I think maybe it's because the dollar is the currency of international exchange, but the financial people answer that one. Performance, he's saying that these cameras expose both us and the criminals. Indeed, yes, they are non-discriminative for them. They don't say this one is government, so it identifies mischief. Actually, if means allow, we would have even body cameras for the law enforcement people, so that we help to ensure that they comply with the law as they go about their work. So for me, I don't see anything wrong, provided we act well and within the law. If the cameras see us, well and good. If they add on, so be it. Blind spots, Honorable Brandon also raised that point. You need to tell us, technical people. He says there are still blind spots which are not covered. Then the private cameras not being on the national grid, and depending on those who are volunteers of information, because lots of private people have information which they get from their cameras, but which they may not want to share to help us to resolve some of these crimes that take place in private places. Honorable Elijah commented about lighting and its interference, especially in Ntinda, and also the lighting on the expressway. We need a conversation to be concluded between us and Minister of Works, but you may want to comment on that one, IGP and team. And then lastly, Honorable Abdallah, DPC Matovu slapped him And then in front of the cameras, I think IGP, you can start from there. But of course, we apply professional standards across the board. So if indeed he did what you say he did, it will be verified and action will be taken. Honorable Chiwanuka, and gladly you have said so when the police chiefs are here, and action will be taken against that officer, if indeed he did what you say he did. JAT is part of the security infrastructure. Internal security is led by the police, where other forces are involved other than the police, the military or intelligence services, they do so within the coordinated framework of the police and the joint operations that we have. Where they go, they do excesses, or even our police officers engage in excesses, then the law must apply, because we give them rules of engagement, we give them SOPs to follow. So I would rather we go to why people behave the way they do, but not why they get involved. We are part of security, but if somebody is errant, then action should be taken against them. I thank you, Chair.